It's important that I tell you, as in most of HR, we have a lot of legal stuff in HR, and so we do throw in a disclaimer. However, because I'm HR, we don't typically do the small fine print to try to trick you or anything. We put in big bold letters. I'm not an attorney. I'm not trying to give any kind of legal advice, and if you have specific legal things, you would want to refer to an attorney or your attorney. So what is HR? Human resources. Sometimes we think it's alphabet soup. You hear all these acronyms, the ERISA, the COBRA, the SHRM, the SPHR, the ADA, OSHA, COLA, PPO. Some of those sound familiar? I could do a whole class just on the acronyms and what these things mean, but it is confusing. So to put it in maybe a few more words that make a little more sense, is it hiring, firing? That's what I hear the most. Is it training and development, compensation and benefits or remuneration, legal, union avoidance, that used to be called personnel, so employee relations, labor relations, performance management, succession planning, communications, all those kinds of things. Is it company culture? Do you see HR as the group that has to plan the company picnic, the golf tournament, and be in charge of the coffee in the break room? That's personally not the way I see it, although real often it falls that way. Is it employee engagement? Can you have one person or one department be in charge of making sure everybody's happy? Do you think it works that way? It really doesn't. They can help, they can influence the culture, and they can be a culture driver, but they are not the person responsible to keeping your employees happy. In fact, most of the times when an employee leaves a company, they're leaving a supervisor or a manager. It's not typically the company was bad, it was a relationship. Is HR part of management, or is it part of, or more of an employee advocate? Maybe some of each?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
To both? I think so too. And I think it's a kind of a balancing act or walking a tightrope role for HR to be both of those, because they are very often the maintainers of the rules, the handbook keeper, the disciplinarian. That happens a lot, but at the same time, they dang well better be speaking up to management to support the employees and make sure employees are being treated fairly. In some companies, the role of safety falls under HR. In some companies, the role of payroll falls under HR. Sometimes it's under finance. I told you I was 6 years at Rio Tinto in the mining industry, and they are always promoting a safety culture. In fact, every single meeting that has more than 2 people, whether it's a phone call, a video conference, or in person, must begin with a safety share. And I would say that at least 99% of the meetings in my 6 years there followed that protocol. A safety share, as defined in their company, is just an open, brief period of time, whatever time is necessary, where anybody in the meeting is expected, not everybody, but it's just kind of a voluntarily, oh, I have a safety share, and they share something on any topic that has to do with any type of safety. It can be with vehicles, it can be with family, it can be with home, chemicals, fire. It can be that it's time to check the air pressure in your tires. I remember one about a guy saying his toddler climbed up the dishwasher and it opened and the tray rolled out and he somehow fell in as he was trying to climb the cupboard, and the knives and forks were pointed up. And so he then counseled all of us, reminded us you probably want to point those down regardless of what the directions may say with your dishwasher. And just those little things that somebody has noticed and chooses to share can stick with other people and can help them in their lives. And so I have a quick safety share for you today. This is on anger management. Sexual harassment can be male to male, male to female, female to male. It can be lower management to upper, I mean in the hierarchy, higher to lower, back and forth, equals. It can be anything. It can even be non-employees, suppliers and customers. Can either be a participant or the person being harassed. And companies need to have zero tolerance regardless of who, when, how, of any of that kind of stuff. And in their handbook or in their policies, or standard operating procedures needs to have something about how that would be addressed, because that is one lawsuit that you're almost guaranteed to lose if it's proven that it's happened. Okay, HR very often is in charge of communications, not just org structures, but benefit changes, expectations, recognitions, celebrating people's anniversaries, not anniversaries with their spouse, but anniversaries with time with their company, those kinds of things. HR typically does the job descriptions, clarifies roles and responsibilities, and maintains the organization structure. So if HR is part of the equation for employees being happy and performing to their highest potential, how do you know if you're even doing your job? Or how do you know if your HR person is doing their job? Just a couple of ideas on this, and this is not, you know, like all the answers, but this is just some quick ideas. If you need some quantitative or maybe number-driven results or measurements, you could put some metrics in place where there's actually counting as to how many things are accomplished per hour, per minute, how many forms, how many phone calls, how many widgets, depending upon what your company does. For qualitative, which is actually probably easier, that's just not the hard data, is a survey. A quick survey is a very simple tool to use. Personally, I've used SurveyMonkey. You can get a free membership to SurveyMonkey. It's like surveymonkey.com, where it's an electronic survey. I mean, you could make it and print it out and hand it out, but if you do it electronically, then you would distribute just a quick URL link to the employees through an email, or you can write it down and have them go home and do it. With the free membership, you get 10 questions per survey. They always want you to upgrade, so you can customize a little bit better, put your logo on there, and do more questions. But I found that the free one works just fine, and you can just do 2 surveys in a row if you want 20 questions, you know, 2 links. So there's always a workaround there, and there's other vendors of surveys as well, but that's just one that's worked well, is a SurveyMonkey. It's a quick way to get employee feedback that's anonymous, that they don't feel threatened or intimidated that somebody's coming and asking them and writing things down, you know, writing their name down. So-and-so said this, so-and-so said this. And then HR's always got the involvement if the unions come into the picture. Let's talk unions. Why did unions originate? Does anybody know? This is the part I want you guys to tell me what you think.
HR director wasn't doing their job.
HR wasn't doing their job. I'm not sure if they even actually had HR back in that time, but okay.
The robber barons, the struggle for power. So collective bargaining, can we together match the capital of the Carnegies and whatnot?
Yep. I don't know if everybody could hear, but the power struggle and the way the employees were treated, I'll throw a few more words into what you said as well. The employees had to collectively get together and bargain to say, hey, you're not treating us fair, and we're tired of this, and we're not going to take it anymore, and we're just all going to quit. Now, if one employee on their own came up and said, this isn't good, I don't like this, they'd say, tough, too bad, you know, good luck finding another job, because times were tough. But with all the employees banded together, they were able to make a difference. Now that was over 100 years ago when that was needed. There's a lot of discussion as to whether unions are still needed today or not. Some people feel they are, some people feel they're not. Same with affirmative action. Some people say it's no longer needed, some people say it is, but that's another topic. Anyway, I found it very interesting on the definition of union. It's where employees have to pay money every week out of their paycheck for the privilege of talking to management, just asking to be treated fairly with their conditions and their pay, and you know, all those things. And so I guess the bottom line there is, if employees are being treated fairly, they don't have a need for a union, and you don't have that extra headache that HR does not like to deal with. But we do like employees be treated fair. So many people going in so many different directions, so many initiatives, and people don't like to be guided sometimes like cats. Okay, why are we asking about HR? Why do you need to know? Why do you care? Do you care? You cared enough to come into here, so that's a good thing. First of all, and this is not an all-inclusive list, but there's legislation of certain things that companies must provide. And whether you've just started your own company and it's a company of 2 people, 1 employee and you, or whether you're in a larger corporation, there's different legislations acts that apply to you, depending upon your size. There are fines, see I put that in the red, if you do not comply to those things. Employee morale is affected by what type of HR you practice or have in place. Plus, it's good business. Does anyone have any other ideas that they would add to other reasons why you need HR?
Yeah,
Paul?
yeah. Employee turnover kills your bottom line. I mean, you just can't survive if you constantly are turning employees over. So HR kind of gets it laid off on them as far as the people making sure that you don't have a high turnover. All of those things have to apply, but obviously the bottom line is happy employees stay.
I completely agree. He said happy employees are dependent upon the HR, I'm sorry to paraphrase, but that the turnover, if you do not have good practices within your company, could kill you basically, kills your bottom line. Not acceptable. Any other reasons? Okay, there's all kinds of lawsuits, depending upon, you can choose any time period and say how much money was spent, how much money did plaintiffs win from companies by suing them when the companies did not do what they were supposed to do. It's really easy for an employee to claim they're going to sue you. It's a lot less frequent that they do, as you mentioned, once they talk to an attorney and find out how expensive. But usually when I have a termination with somebody, there's been a progressive disciplinary system in place, a process, corrective action or disciplinary, which way you want to look at it. One's a little more negative, where they had been warned and things had built up, and at one point they're told if you do this again or any other infringement, then you will be terminated. So when the next time comes, it's generally not a surprise and people understand, and you're only doing it because you have proof or eyewitnesses, right? So I typically would have a very, very clean termination. And they did pursue it through the deposition phase, where you get to sit in a conference room and all stare at this person and your lawyer just hammers them, ask them all kinds of questions to get to their emotional state of mind and stability and those kinds of things. They ask questions about their personal life, about any medications they have, about physical conditions, relationships that they have, personal relationships within their family, with their spouse, to identify where they're at. And they've made it so very, very uncomfortable, requesting a summary judgment, like the lawyer specifically said, okay, this is arbitrary and capricious, kind of lawyer terms saying this is ridiculous. And the judge would say, okay, we'll take that part out. And then they'd kind of come back with something else, and then we'd take it back again and motion for dismissal, and the judge would say, yeah, you're right, we'll take that part out. Legally, a tort is what somebody can claim if they feel they've been wronged intentionally or accidentally. It's a civil wrong. Different to HR law, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, specifically Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. HR laws very often have specific maximum fines and punishments involved. But if someone comes to you with a civil claim, then it's kind of outside of these other laws we're going to talk about. And the tort, again, has no limit to the amount of damages that a court could give to those persons. So that's another reason to treat them fairly, right? So once you get a disgruntled employee, or okay, let's change that, an employee that has been terminated, real often they want to file for unemployment. Well, unemployment is only granted to people who have been let go for no cause of their own. It's not their fault. So if you fire them for cause, they're not supposed to get unemployment. Now, they always have the option to request or appeal and say, no, I really want the unemployment, in which case you have an unemployment hearing. And the state has ALJ, Administrative Law Judge. I think they actually changed the title, tweaked it recently, but that conducts the case. And real often it's on a telephone. Back in the days, like 20 years ago, we would actually go to Salt Lake and sit in an office and faced by, like just lined up across from someone's desk, and you'd present your information, they'd present theirs, and you'd have a nice little conversation with the judge being in charge, and you're very respectful, and you say yes ma'am, no ma'am, or yes sir, no sir, and you only speak when you're spoken to or when you're asked. Now it's typically a phone call, which is fine. If you get in a situation, you have an unemployment hearing, there's several steps you want to take to make sure that you'll be successful. Each state has some very specific guidelines around it. Utah has 3 specific factors that an employer must prove in order to prevail. Other states are not exactly the same. In Utah, you have to prove that the employee had knowledge of whatever they did wrong. There was some infraction, right, is why you let them go. Did they know better? Your best defense to that is if you have had them sign a piece of paper from a handbook or the rules saying, I received a copy of these rules and I understand I'm responsible for them. Do not have it say, and I've read them. You don't care if you've read them, if they read them. You just need to have them say they received them. They need to sign that, date it, and you keep it in their personnel file. You should always have a separate personnel file for every employee, and you do not put any medical medical information in there. My new job's with medical devices. It's on the brain right now. And so you have a separate file that you keep their new hire information in, their performance management, appraisals, commendations, anything to do with the life of that employee that's not the medical or not the I-9s and not the benefit stuff. That's a separate file. Anyway, so you have that piece of paper saying the employee has knowledge of what's right and what's wrong, or at least that you've told them whether they listened or not. Or if you don't have a handbook, then you have a training session and you label it, outline what the key points are, and you have everybody in attendance sign and date it as well. Well, they don't have to date it if it's dated at the top, but so you need to be able to cross that one off your list. Culpability, you have to prove. That means it actually does harm your company. If they did something wrong and it didn't really matter, it's kind of, let's use the extreme example, if they wore purple socks to work, even if that was in your handbook not to wear purple socks, if you don't have a really good reason for it, then you can't choose culpability. So why are you firing them for that? Because it didn't really matter. So the most frequent terminations I've done have been on attendance or punctuality or combination. And it's just a simple statement to the judge to be able to say, you know what, if everybody came to work 10 minutes late every day, we would lose this many dollars, it would impact us in this way. And if you can relate that to a bottom line type number, not like, oh, it's just kind of hard to get going, it's kind of, you know, we turn on the machine and nothing's coming out, but put some dollars to it as to why this is really a bad thing for us. The third thing you need to prove is control. So if somebody was late to work, and minutes late every day, we would lose this many dollars, it would impact us in this way. And if you can relate that to a bottom line type number, not like, oh, it's just kind of hard to get going, it's kind of, you know, we turn on the machine and nothing's coming out, but put some dollars to it as to why this is really a bad thing for us. The third thing you need to prove is control. So if somebody was late to work and it was their final chance, somebody else crashes into them on their way to work, it was out of their control, you probably wouldn't want to terminate them for that, even though it was their final chance. You'd want to give them one more final, you know, like I really mean it now. Yeah, but if they just say my alarm clock didn't go off, that's within their control. If they say the power went off, so my alarm clock didn't go off, well, guess what? That's when you say you should have had a battery operated one or a wind-up alarm clock.
So in Utah's right to work, so I've been told a lot of times you're better off not giving a reason if you let someone go. But then you open the door to where it'd be hard to fight the unemployment claim, is that?
Utah's employment at will. Employment at will is either party, the company or the employee, has the chance to say goodbye to each other at any point in time with or without any reason. Now there's attorneys that will even argue, oh, so in order to maintain that you do that, so you can not give a reason, does that mean every so often you just have to just randomly pull someone out and say we're exercising our right? Because otherwise, you're always having a reason. So if you're going to have a reason, and again, I'm not going to give legal advice, but in my experience, if you have a clean case, it's actually better to list it out. If you've never done that before, I'd be very cautious if that's not the way you've been doing it. You don't have to share everything with that employee. But if you put yourself in the employee's shoes, if you're working somewhere and you think you're doing just fine, and then all of a sudden they say goodbye, we don't need you to come back, give us your badge, what are you thinking at that point in time? Besides that they're dirt bags. You know, so always put yourself in the employee's shoes. Treat them the way you'd want to be treated. So discrimination, the EEO laws themselves only say race, religion, disability, national origin, color, age, and sex. However, there are other laws state laws, company policies that cover even more forms of discrimination. These are just samples. Family situations, sexual orientation, gender identification, even how heavy somebody is, tall or short, tattoos, piercings, smokers. These are all...
What's the law on smokers?
The EEO does not prohibit you discriminating on smokers.
Okay.
Okay, as long as you follow what other rules and regulations or laws there are about smoking areas and those kinds of things. They're not telling you that you can or cannot, or, you know, it's not a protected class.
Okay.
But there are some places that would say we will not discriminate against you because of that. But I mean, you have to watch out, like with the family situation. We all know of a reality that a small business especially, if a woman comes in and she's obviously very pregnant and she wants to be hired right now and she wants to get on your benefits and then she's going to take at least 6 weeks off, it's kind of hard not to discriminate against that person. Even if they're qualified for the job, they're not the one you want to hire right then. But that's, you know, illegal discrimination. So, and yes, size matters. The reason that does is because, for example, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act only applies to private employees with 15 or more employees, versus the Age Discrimination Act, you have to have 20 or more employees to be covered. And I've got 4 different slides of these different things. So again, we could take a whole several-day session on just employment law. These are things you probably need to know about. Some of the biggest challenges that HR professionals tell us are coming up right now is retaining, keeping the best employees, developing or succession planning for our leaders, and creating a culture. You know, HR requires analytical skills. Really quick test. How do you put a giraffe into a refrigerator? Anybody know? I'll tell you. You open up the refrigerator door, you put the giraffe in, and you shut the door. Okay, this tells us whether you complicate things or not, or whether it's simple, straightforward. Second question, how do you put an elephant into a refrigerator? Very good. Most people say you open the door, you put it in. No, you first open the door, remove the giraffe, then put in the elephant. So very good. We got smart people here. So this test demonstrates your ability to think through the repercussions of the previous actions. Third question, there's only 4 questions. The Lion King is hosting an animal conference. All the animals plan to attend except one. Which animal's not going to go to the animal conference? The elephant, duh. He's still in the refrigerator. This is to test your memory, okay? So, anybody got all 3 right so far? Number 4, there's a river you must cross. It's used by the crocodiles, but you don't have a boat. How do you cross the river? I hear mumblings, but I'll tell you. You jump into the river, you swim across, because all the animals are at the animal conference. Okay, back to business. Seriously, the analytic part, that's part of the big future of HR, is reporting, analytics, data, collecting data on employees, on things that are happening, how many times, how do you improve it. It's part of lean manufacturing, if you get more into that, Six Sigma, using statistics and stuff. So a lot of data going, HR is data driven, especially going forward. You'll see a lot of dashboards, a lot of fancy signs, electronic tied to Excel spreadsheets, and green lights and red lights as to whether it's good or not going so good, stoplights. Big, huge part of future HR. If an employee ever comes to you with a complaint, you need to do an investigation. You need to get witnesses. You need to get signed statements from different people's stories. So you need to do a timely, fair investigation, document it in paper, and the attorneys always say document, document, document. That's the key word there. The government also requires that each company, again depending upon size, has specific workplace hangings, like required posters that have to do with different laws. And healthcare costs, we know, are going up. Forecasts are that, yeah, they're not going to go back down anytime soon. And to end up with, I wanted to talk about, okay, so now you know a little bit more about HR, but not enough. So what resources are out there? And just things, kind of brainstorm things I came up with, and I'm going to ask for your help on this. You've got the Chamber of Commerce. You can network with other businesses, even just neighbors, family people. What does your company do, even if they're not in HR? You can just ask around. You can get lots of information. You can call the college. We've got university people. I don't know exactly which department or where you're going to get the most help. It kind of depends a lot on your question. We've got the Bridgerland Applied Technology Center. You've got Bridgerland SHRM, which is a Society of Human Resource Management. They have great resources. You have local staffing companies, if that's the kind of help you need. You can always get consultants. We've got Department of Workforce Services. We've got LDS Employment Agency. There's brokers available in the area that help you with your benefits, because you're not expected to have to know everything about benefits as you grow a company and need to put benefits in place. There's social media. There's a whole nother session on that, so they can talk about that. You can get an intern and give them projects to go out and research things for you. We talked about SurveyMonkey. Obviously, you can go to a library and look things up. You can go on the internet. There's free college classes even. The Herald Journal had an article not too long ago that listed websites of some 3 or 4 or 5 different college level classes. You can just go online and click through the slideshows and the presentations. YouTube, you can go to YouTube and type in, I don't know, college accounting or something, and you'll find numerous things of people who have just voluntarily given you all kinds of information. Search engines, I go to Google and just type in something. If I have an HR question, I belong to SHRM, Society of Human Resource Manager. I go to shrm.org. Okay, government's got all kinds. This is not an exhaustive list. The SBA, and I notice they're here, Department of Labor, OSHA, EEOC, government publication. SBA is already represented. The Department of Workforce Services can help you find people to fill your jobs. They can help you through quite a few things like that with their specialist. We mentioned social media. The only one I'd really dwell on is LinkedIn. It's a great networking tool. It's free. There are paid subscriptions, but the free one's always been just fine for me. If you go on there, look for me and send me an invitation to link in, and you'll learn more about it. But it's a great way, not just, okay, one way I would describe it is it's kind of like an electronic Rolodex. So places I've worked before and I've moved on, my people whose phone numbers I had there, they've moved on too, and so now I no longer maybe know how to find them, especially if I had like a landline number and they've shut off landlines and gone to cell phones. So it gets harder and harder to find people. But once they're on LinkedIn, all they do, if everyone maintains their profile there, you can just with one click send people a quick email, get back in touch, see where they're at, that kind of stuff. Besides that though, there's different groups you can join. For example, the Salt Lake City HR professionals, a guy posted, oh, hey, here's the recent highlights on the IRS, DOL, and HHS. Remember, my final advice is the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated.